Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Soulful Intuitive. The last episode that we recorded, we talked about the effects of infidelity, and we talked about what we can do with that lesson and that experience that has affected our lives. So today, I was thinking that maybe we can touch up on relationships, romantic relationships to be exact, and also the breakups. So, what is it that we experience when we break up with someone, and the generational effects of it when we talk about our with our parents and our grandparents, and how it is that usually with let's say the generation of our grandparents, they really didn't experience breakups. They would marry someone and they would stick it out, or maybe if they got a divorce, which was very unlikely for that generation, then they would just stay single or not get remarried. And then the generation after that, the breakups became more often and more common because people realized that, we grow and we learn and we move on. And what it is that we need to teach ourselves and teach our kids in terms of relationships and what matters and what doesn't matter. And for example, I'm going to touch up on my own experience when I went through breakup and breakups, but mainly my first experience of breaking up with someone that I wish I had some guidance on, and I wish that is something that they would cover in school because we need it. It's essential, and the breakups can actually break us, and what we do with the breakups in regards to the future relationships that we have, and also what we can do in order to heal our wounds, because the breakups, can affect us in a very negative way. So, for example, my first relationship happened when I was in my late teens, and then it continued to my early 20s. And I didn't really understand, like most people don't, as teenagers or in their early 20s, as what is it that they need to do in a relationship, and how the relationship will pan out. And is it going to be the forever one, which, when you're young, you think that's usually the case. And how, in terms of, for example, same-sex relationships, how there was not really a model for me to base my relationship on that one. And also there was a lot of question marks, and there was a lot of shame and ambiguity. And it was pretty much one of the hardest things that I went through, and I didn't really have anyone to talk to. So I was lucky enough that I went to college, and there was a counseling center there, and I talked to the counselor there, and this lady pretty much explained to me how toxic that relationship was, because I thought that what we were going through was normal, and I also thought that what was happening to me was just unique to me, because I didn't know anyone else that was going through that. I'm really glad that that counselor basically straightened me out, gave me some education, because usually we look at our primary relationships that are the relationships we see with between our parents, and then depending on which one of these parents we relate to, we usually copy one of them. So I realized that, for example, in my relationship with my first partner, I pretty much was being my mom, and I was providing a lot of support and service, and I was able to look at a lot of shortcomings and look at it as normal, and was always there in terms of forgiving and forgetting, and pretty much picking up the next day as if nothing's happened. And when I made a conscious decision to break up with my first partner, because the counselor that I was seeing made me realize that this relationship is toxic and it's not to my benefit, because it was affecting my mood, it was affecting my self-esteem more than anything else, to the point that when I worked up the courage to break up with this person, I would walk into places thinking that I was being looked at, because I really suffered with my self-esteem after that, and it was difficult to pick myself back up. So I would really like to share that part of my life, and I'm sure that for a lot of people who are going through relationships, or their first relationship, or the relationships after that, they can relate to that feeling of going through a road and not really knowing where it's going. And you're just driving and driving and driving, even though the road is pretty, pretty dark, and you know it's not going somewhere nice, and there's no destination in sight. And you're just hoping for somewhere better than where you are. And but also at the same time, you're not really comfortable with yourself and your values and your self-worth, to think that maybe it's just it's time to turn around and stop driving on that particular road. And that road is a metaphor for that relationship that we're in, that is not going anywhere. And basically it is a toxic relationship, and it's never too late to turn around. We should never wait until we have fallen into pieces. And not to say that if we have fallen to pieces that we can pick ourselves up. We can and we will. However, it's going to be a more difficult road to recovery emotionally. And I was very young when that happened, fortunately, and I just intuitively knew that I had to put myself back together. I could not turn to anyone in order to heal my wounds, because I just didn't think that I was comfortable enough to share what was going on with me. And I also didn't know how I was feeling most of the time. I just knew that I wasn't being myself, and I just didn't have my usual positivity and enthusiasm. And I basically just had to drown myself in a lot of self-help books, and just read the ones that I resonated with, and it was very, very helpful. And the initial self-esteem that I had was given to me by my parents and my family and loved ones and friends, and my accomplishments in music and academics. And I wasn't much of a sportsman, but I swam and I skied, and I was good at those. And I was not always in those swimming races. I wasn't always the first one, but I wasn't the last one either. And I kind of knew that I was more into individual sports and group sports. So I just pursued those. But in terms of my self-esteem, after my first relationship, I was very broken. And I didn't really think highly of myself anymore. I doubted a lot of the qualities that I had, because I was in a relationship with another person who was wounded, and I was looking out and looking from that person. I was looking from him to validate me, and that person didn't. And not only he didn't do that, because he was feeling very insecure himself, he pretty much crushed me in a lot of ways. And I'm glad that I had help, that I could get out of it, because I noticed that I was no longer able to concentrate academically. I had lost my way, and in order to be successful in this world, you have to have enough trust in yourself and in your abilities, and I had lost all of those, and also the direction that I was going. And especially when you're young and you're dating someone out of your school or your class, you have a lot of common friends. So the breakup is not just the breakup with that person. The breakup is the breakup with a lot of your friends, because then, people are young and they take sides. And And also, unfortunately, sometimes families are involved, and it's just not an easy thing to do. And nobody prepares you for that. No one, like, I don't think that most parents would sit their kids down and say, this is how you feel, and this is when you have to exit, and this is what breakups are about. Because a lot of parents don't even know that. They're struggling with the same situations. And so I was certainly not equipped with enough knowledge to know how to go and what to do and what the next step would bring me. And it was a series of trials and errors. So I did it, and I want to provide information for people who are struggling taking that step to break up with someone. And to break up with someone, one, you have to like know that like if you're not getting your needs met, and if you're not feeling like this relationship is bringing you to your next step in terms of your growth, and but not just that, but it's pushing you back to the steps that you had taken before prior to that relationship, then this relationship is doomed. It's not helping you, because relationships are a way for us to see ourselves in someone else and to help that person grow, and to maybe also be helped by that person for your own personal growth. And when someone is out there to beat you down and to break you up and to make you feel bad most of the time, then it's time to say goodbye. It's no different than, living in a place where you just feel like it's not your home. You don't feel homely there, or wearing clothes that don't make you feel good about yourself. And not to say that feeling good about yourself has to be provided by other people, but when the energies are no longer aligned and are matching. And so I did that, and it took me a couple of years to find myself again. And there were very hard years. There was a lot of questioning about who I was and who I wanted to be, and how did I end up there with someone who treated me very poorly, and why was it for me so difficult to see it and to walk away. What is it? What did that experience tell me about me? What is it that I have to work on? What is it that I have to avoid in my future relationships? And I intuitively knew that because I was not feeling very good about myself, that I had to do a lot of self work, and I knew that I wasn't ready for another relationship. A lot of times people make the mistake of jumping from one relationship to another, which is a mistake, because you're going to repeat the same mistakes and the same patterns from your old relationships. And it's only going to bring you more pain. Now, some people recover faster than others. Some of us have more help. Some of us have better therapists. Some of us have better knowledge around that. And we can see the pattern. We can connect the dots. And then we can make sure that we have built enough inner strength and brought more wisdom and self-awareness that in our next relationships, we're not going to repeat those. And a lot of those mistakes that we make and the shortcomings that we have in romantic relationships are the ones that we've learned at home with our primary family. It's just we have seen certain patterns, and they became familiar to us. So they maybe no longer have the same alarming effect when they happen to us by a stranger. Where maybe when we talk to our friends who didn't grow up in that environment or didn't have the same experiences, they're usually good ones to sound the alarm. So they're the ones who sometimes we need to talk to if we're not comfortable talking to our family members, or if we don't have a counselor or a therapist. And another way to know is just by just listening to your heart. When it's a struggle, and when you feel worse and worse every day, it is a pretty good indication that this is not happening. This is not working out for us, and definitely for you. And usually when you try to step forward and maybe attempt to break up with someone, that person either feels it and they break up with you, and it feels really bad, because you don't want to be dumped. Nobody wants to be dumped. Or they will then, for a very short period of time, change. And they will promise you the world. I'll do this for you and I'll do that for you. And, I certainly fell for that twice. And the change was very short-lived. Everything went back to the exact same negative pattern that it was. And I ended up feeling even more resentful and sadder. And I ended it, and I listened to my counselor, and I changed my school because I was running into this person all the time, and it was just easier for me to not see that person in order to move on. Especially when you're young, you're very emotional, and people can tell you what you want to hear. And also, for me, for example, if I saw somebody tear up or show any kind of remorse, then I would just immediately go to the place of, oh, like maybe I made a mistake, or maybe I'm being harsh, or maybe that's it. Like maybe I'm just ruining my chance of happiness. And now when I look back, I see how foolish that was, but also I was 20 years old, didn't really know much about the world, and I didn't really have enough knowledge in my backpack in order to decipher between what's good and what's bad, especially when it comes to relationships with others. And that person was also very young, exactly my age, and he didn't know any better. So nothing against that person. This is just not about my first relationship. This is about a breakup and what to do after a breakup. And what I did after that breakup that really just empowered me was drowning myself in learning about who I am and psychology and relationship dynamics and other people's memoirs and other people's books about different kinds of power struggles and abuse, what abuse means, physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, what the basic, red lines, the basic red flags. And I really hope that in the near future, schools provide kids with classes about psychology and about human relations, because we mainly count on what we learn at home. And what we learn at home in the best situation is very far from ideal. And what worked with between our parents isn't necessarily going to work between us and others, because we're different people than they are. They're from another generation. They had different needs. They had different models. They had different values. And generation to generations, these values change. For example, the need for independence, the need for like what love means, what sacrifice means, what service means, the barriers, and the red lines also change. And we need to constantly educate ourselves about that. And boundaries, like the most important things that wasn't taught to me and a lot of people my age, and even like people, the youth. Boundaries, depending on the person and your needs, vary, but very important in order to have a healthy relationships. And also consequences and morals, and what that means, especially in same-sex relationships, was something that I had to learn on my own the hard way. And so to wrap this up and not go on and on and on, breakups are very painful. They require a lot of courage to do. We shouldn't always wait until the full car crash and annihilation of our values and our self-esteem. We can see the signs and then pull over and then turn around and just find another road, find another relationship. And after every relationship, take a pretty good time, like a long time, to go through what happened, to assess, to self-assess, to write down what we are not going to bring into our next relationship. What is it that maybe we sought in a partner that we no longer seek, and what qualities are very valuable to us and what qualities are not tolerable. and really just be very firm with that list of things and the lessons, and then bring it to our next relationships, and also really like go through our baggage. So if we, for example, were cheated on in our past relationships, make sure that we don't enter the next relationship with a chip on our shoulder. Just because somebody failed us and ruined our trust doesn't mean that the next person has to pay for that. And if somebody stole for us doesn't mean that the next person is going to be a thief. And if somebody abused us doesn't mean that the next person is going to be an abuser. But really just know that that has been done to us, that we've processed it, that we gave enough time to heal, and also be honest and vulnerable with our next partner about our scars. Because sure, we work on it and then we process it, and hopefully it's healed, but it leaves a scar tissue in our emotional structure. And we can just say, these are my sensitive areas, kind of just when you're going to the gym, if you're working out with a trainer, you say, I have a bad back, or I have a bad knee, or I have a bad neck. And then they, work around it, as opposed to just being completely shut down and closed off and not giving your new partner your manual, your instructions. And that really eases the pain of getting to know someone, and also the pain that they will have to go through in order to get to know you. And it's for some people is uncomfortable, for some people isn't, but it's just really easier in the beginning of the road to be vulnerable, because that person's still a stranger to you, and you're just like saying all these things, and the things that they need to know about you, that, for example, you're a sensitive person, or you dealt with anger before, or you dealt with rage before, or you have a hard time trusting, or you had a hard time trusting. And these are the reasons. And this is the way that you learn to communicate, because you weren't a good communicator before and now you are. Or you used to leave the situation when things got rough, or when you couldn't talk about your feelings, you would raise your voice, or you would leave the room, or you would bang the cabinet doors, or you would punch the walls. But now you know better, or that your partner did these things and it really didn't work out for you, where you couldn't communicate, or it was difficult to be vulnerable because that person would take that information and use it against you. I mean, the list goes on. We can go on about how people hurt each other in every relationship. And it's not unique to a specific gender or race or a culture or human beings, and this is what we do. But when we become self-aware, knowing that these things have happened, knowing that we've done things to other people and other people have done things to us, we will still stay centered, we will still stay grounded, and we try our best not to do that. And not to say that we're not going to fall off the wagon, we're not going to be human at times and make the same mistakes again, but knowing and having that awareness that we've done it and it didn't work in the past, knowing what we should watch out for in other people and our partners, we have now this knowledge, this wisdom, that we shouldn't do the things in the past that didn't work. And we shouldn't put up with the things in the past that hurt us and ruined us and brought us down. And by just knowing when to say no to ourselves and also to others, we are holding on to our power, and we keep that relationship honest and adult and mature. I'm really interested in hearing from all of you about your relationship lessons and what you've learned and what hurt you and what that hurt brought you in terms of self-development. Please feel free to leave a comment, and we will share that with others if you are kind enough to want to be vulnerable and use your pain in order to help others grow. Thank you very much, and I will talk to you very soon.